Alright, what's up everybody? Been a long time since I last streamed at all. I'm going to turn the music down. It looks like my mic is working right now. And I'm not muted again for the whole first hour of the stream. I'm just going to turn the music down a bit. Yeah, it has been quite a while. What, like 2 or 3 weeks? I think since I streamed anything. Maybe. Besides the Chronos game for half a second. But yeah, let's see. Let me do this. So yeah, I had a lot of things to go over. Still don't have a good intro of anything, so I will not do that. Want to talk about a lot of things, a few things just to talk about in the beginning, mostly about Seattle elections. I guess don't really want to discuss all the elections at all, because plenty of people have talked about all the national ones that got more attention. Virginia, and obviously Zoran Mondani. But I am going to bring up and review a bit of what has happened here in Seattle. Turn the music down even more. Man, still can't get this audio managed properly. But so let's look at this. So I'm just going to have a lot of things on the list. I'm going to keep the list up. There's a lot of things because it's been a long time. So let's see. Let's go. Let's drop the music because it's annoying. So yeah, I'm gonna go over this here. So I wanted to go over Working Families Party candidates. And why am I going to discuss this? Firstly, because they've done a lot of good work to actually help working families, as their title suggests. They've had prominence for a while in different elections. They're started in New York, so they're mostly known for in New York. So obviously, as I say New York, you could see that I'm going to pivot to talking about Zoran. So Zoran Mamdani had a huge win, come from behind win in New York, as everybody must know now if you're even vaguely interested in following politics at all, and at least if you're a voter and whatnot. So Working Families Party has a list of candidates on their website. Now, I think in this particular instance, if I'm not wrong, I'm not sure, but I believe that Zoran Mamdani is a Working Families Party member. I'm not entirely sure. If he is, that would be great, but there are often times and a lot of times that I believe, again, I'm not entirely sure, that people listed here could be actual members, and or they could just be people that the Working Families Party endorses pretty much, or has endorsed in some capacity. So I want to talk about that here because I wanted to pivot down to Washington, and we can see folks here, all of which had votes in this past election on Tuesday. So who did we have? And I'm going to focus on the people I do know of, and that I've canvassed for directly. And those folks are Erica Evans, Eddie Lynn, Katie Wilson, Gomai Zahile, Alexis Mercedes Rink, and Dion Foster. All of those folks I've canvassed for in various capacities. We've done, campaign canvassing for a group of them directly. I've met all of them multiple times. I've also canvassed for them independently, for them directly. So collectively as a group, went to the various, election parties and other meetings and whatever. But so wanted to show that there is more people across the country that are being touted and pushed forth through by the same party who didn't do all of the work obviously, but helped greatly with Zoran Mamdani's win in New York. So if we go back down here again to the Washington candidates, sorry, my cat keeps jumping around. If we go back down to the Washington candidates here, if we look at how good or how well these folks have done, we can look it up right now. King County election results. KUOW. So if we just look here in Seattle right now, let's take a look. So right now, this keeps getting closer and closer. Katie Wilson, Working Families Party, and at least an endorsed individual. Again, gets wonky with the candidates that they've simply endorsed versus candidates that are directly members or part of the leadership or just members at all. But anyway, this keeps getting closer and closer. The voter turnout seems to be doing better than King County overall. Over right now, as they continue to count votes, and we can go into why it takes a while in a minute. As they continue to count votes, Seattle voter turnout looks to be 55%. The county as a whole seems to be 44%. I would believe that 44% includes Seattle votes. Therefore, if you were to exclude Seattle voter turnout numbers or voter votes at all, that county average would be worse. So the spread between Seattle city, voters voting and other cities voting seems to be pretty wide, which is pretty, unfortunate. We'd want everybody in every city to be voting. Working Families Party has candidates in other cities, and obviously we'd want them to be, working for working families in those cities as well. So anyway, this seems to be getting closer. Still, a lot of good chunk of votes to go. It's very possible that this could be greatly diminished. It's to me, it looks like still not a long shot, but each passing day, it's getting a little bit more worrisome. 10,000 votes is still a really good margin, obviously. So that she could still come back. That Katie Wilson could hopefully come back and still, catch her from behind as the votes continue. But Again, for the Working Families Party candidates, down here, as we have this list that's been highlighted here, we have Erica Evans, who, completely destroyed for a city attorney, which is amazing. Eddie Lynn as well, even larger destroying. There's more counting to be done, but these are huge margins. That's totally an audio win. Alexis just continues to gain her lead tremendously. I feel like this is even more than percentage-wise that she got in the primary, which would make sense because there's less people to split the vote between. So she's going to completely destroy. She's obviously been doing a good job. She already passed a bunch of legislation, even with Bruce Harrell still there. And Dion Foster getting this other clutch, like, citywide council position seat. And that's a little bit closer, but it's still amazing there. So many of the Working Families Party, except one, it seems the votes are still being counted, but all of them except one are going to have a position in city leadership, which means that they can help push for more of those similar policies that Mamdani is going to be pushing for in New York. So that's a good sign, good things to see. Amazing turnout, amazing voting. Still want to get turnout higher. We want to get more people to vote in these off-year weird elections, which I won't talk about today because that's been talked about to death, of just why do we have odd numbered year elections. Odd number year elections usually have lower turnout, obviously because the even years have other, midterms, big national elections and obviously the presidential elections, so, but I won't talk about that here, but I do want to have a higher voter turnout, which is something to be discussed at some time. And I know many people have talked about it before me on podcasts and news and whatnot. But it has to be something that has to be tried different. Anyway, this is the only race I'm worried about that I'm watching. I would, even if, Katie Wilson, the thing about this is that even if Katie Wilson doesn't somehow win, I know that she'll still be involved and still work to try and help working families, as opposed to Bruce. Bruce would be similar to me, as though he's not as bad as Andrew Cuomo. To me, he would still just leave and maybe go into do little community things, maybe, but he won't help as much as Katie's willing to do in whatever capacity she can. And being the mayor is another capacity that she wanted to help, and wants to help. So, amazing performance by Working Families Party candidates in Seattle. Do want to take a look at King County for Gamay Zahilai. And it looks like this is a good sign. This is actually getting even wider. Last time I looked, it was like 50 point something percent. So it's now 51.7. So a percentage point increase in the gap. So that's good to see. This is for the King County wide election. So way more votes to come through. So King County executive. So, you think of it as the mayor of the county. So this is also really good. Claudia Belducci, she used to be the mayor of Bellevue, which is just across the water from Seattle, across the water to the east. They have different but similar issues. But yeah, so she had some okay policies and things as well, I guess I would say, but without too many details for no reason. It's much better that Gamay Zahilai is there. He had Working Families Party endorsement. So this is amazing, like, turnout, like, fully by all of these Working Families Party candidates. And there's even others in other cities. Like, I, didn't look at it very much because I was working, here in King County, but in Spokane, I'm pretty sure let's see. I'm pretty sure Zach, has won. Zach Zapone declares victory in re-election to Spokane City Council. So he was already there, but he got re-elected. So that's great. And I think Sarah is not, let's see. She seems like, looks like it's a close race there because Sarah seems to be responding to the victory claims for some of that, so it might be close. I haven't been watching. Maybe I need to look at those numbers, which I guess I'll do right now. Let's take a look. I believe it's Snohomish County. Do they keep track of them there? Maybe they're not. No, yeah, that's wrong. Do they not? Are they not keeping track of? Do they have their own? Yeah, KUOW is just a local NPR state, or local NPR station. So I wonder if maybe they have a different. Let's see. Spokane Council election results. Okay. Is this new? Is this okay? General election. All right. So, let's see. Oh my goodness. Okay. Spokane. Spokane County. Yeah. So that's gonna be. Okay. Let's see. County only. Let's just see if it goes Spokane City. Let's do Spokane City. City of Spokane. City of Spokane. All right. Prop 1. Okay. So, yeah. So, looks like Sarah, who is a Working Families Party endorsed, at least, candidate, she seems to be really close. She seems to be rejecting if Jonathan Bingle seems to be trying to declare victory. But good Lord, that is such low numbers. Holy moly. Just in general, I mean, it's even lower than Seattle, which is lower than New York, obviously. But man, how many is that? 200? 190? Wow. That is a crazy close race. Wow. But yeah, so if we look back, so Zach seems to have one. Let's see if Kate might have, let's see. Let's look at that. I probably see it here. So Kate seems to have won handedly. So that is amazing as well. So in how many positions are there? Let's see. How many do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, that's judge. How do they got? 1, 2, 3. That's judge. Maybe the other council positions, it's possible that they weren't up for election, perhaps. So yeah. If there's only 3, then yeah, this is an amazing turnout for Working Families Party candidates in multiple cities. So that's pretty amazing. Wow. Okay, so just wanted to talk about like that. There is more, like obviously, insane win in one of like the largest city in the country, and just even more candidates in other states. Like I haven't looked at any of these other states to see how these other folks have done, but there are other states in which these Working Family Parties endorse candidates. Again, similar policies. They're going to be different in different states. Blah blah blah. But the general North Star of Working Families Party goals, there are many different candidates working to actually help working families. So, lot to be, even more to be happy about. I know how many people were like just excited from Mamdani's win in the primary, for him to fully win now. There's a bunch of wins across the country. There, a lot of dismay, obviously, after Trump winning again. A lot of dismay between like maybe your fellow Americans in other states that might have voted different ways and whatnot. But I think it's very clear that the thing that people were voting for or voting was for somebody to help them with their, actual material economic conditions. They are clearly looking to help economically. Like I think that's it. They don't care about any of the other culture things that somebody else would be talking about. And then I do say somebody else broadly in that any candidate from any sort of faction. They want their material conditions helped. And that's what Working Families Party endorsed or affiliated candidates are doing. And their message is winning. And Seattle and Spokane, which is, on the east side of the state, still a bigger city, still a little bit more progressive than the rest of, or at least left toward than the rest of, than other parts of possibly the state. But even in that, there are people all across the state in every single city that want their economic conditions met, don't care about the other stuff. So great things yesterday. Yeah. So now what I'm going to switch to is more of what I do, which is reviewing some of like lesser known tidbits of people talking about economics or whatnot, and just poking holes in their foolishness and idiocy. So I have a big list here. Maybe I'll get to all of it. Maybe I won't. Some of it is kind of funny that I made the list of to talk about because it is even more information has come out since then. That just makes it the case that's going to make my argument all the more prescient. So I'm going to start with this again. Talk about it a lot. I wish I had I should probably write down a snippet to say, but listen to this podcast a lot, mostly because it's now just Ed Elson, he's younger. He's from Princeton. He's, was handed everything. Not to say he isn't smart or a refined person or whatever, but was handed this position. His mom was friends with his mom's friend, knew Scott, so got a connection there. So handed it pretty much from there. Again, jobs like this are all about just so you know. And it's extremely difficult to start anything from scratch like this. So, and then Scott, he's half right on some things. Like, I'm fine with what he says about he's trying to focus more on just talking about men. Even though it's, we could talk about that later. But he gets his opinion on Israel and the genocide is entirely wrong. His opinion on how we got to Trump winning again is entirely wrong. He still fully believes that even though capitalism got us to where we are, he thinks that you just can do capitalism, but do a little bit things nicer. Which this is all the things that capitalism still leads to. So anyway, don't really listen to him when he's speaking about anything. He has some, again, fine ideas or fine platitudes to say about just men needing, or younger men needing help in XYZ capacity. But that could be good and could be bad in what the focus is. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about this, some snippets here from this episode. Are you building AI for progress or power? So, Darren, we can actually look up who he is for a moment, just so we can see what he's going to be talking about. He's an economist from of Armenian descent from Turkey. So a lot of people must had to have read his books before. We can actually look at all of his books here. You can search them up yourself. I've read, I think, just only one of his books. I haven't read any of his actual academic books. I've read more of his, I guess you call them pop culture books. I've read Why Nations Fail. Read that years ago. I think I only read it in 2014. Kind of forget. But anyway, so that's like the biggest thing. And the snippet I talk about that from that book a lot is that extractive political institutions breed extractive economic institutions, and it creates a cycle on itself. So if you become extractionary in any capacity of those two little pillars, if you were to believe they're separate pillars, then you just create extraction that feeds on itself. And as you can see, like we saw for 50 years of extraction based on the terrible tax policies, that have been just extractionary based off everybody that built things up until, you can say the 70s. I just start with the 80s because it's easier. But all the stuff that was built up until then in the United States anyway, there's people starting to extract from what has existed. So I have a few different minutes to discuss there. It's been a long time, or long time at least for me, because I'm shoving new information into my brain every day. And so things fall out now because I'm old. So I'm going to see what these timestamps were, because I did make timestamps, and then see what it is, and then it'll remind me of what I was going to talk about these minutes for. So let's see.
Support various social.
I'm going to do this. Going to skip to 18. There we go.
By the full potential of a suite of technologies may not be realized or may not be realized quickly. One is monopoly. If one or a few companies dominate everything and they use that in order to extract all the rents, but also slow down innovation, that's one recipe for many good things not happening. So today, I think the digital world or communication world would be very different if AT&T had remained like the sole monopoly. So the breakup there probably opened the field for more shakeup. The second is,
So just pause there on monopoly. It's really interesting that, and there's two reasons why you can only talk about AT&T. So at the time, they called it the bells. They wanted to break up the bells, and that was when, again, telecommunications, I think a lot of people actually know this, was getting consolidated to one group, and so they forced them to break up. It was going towards consolidation, so they forced these different phone companies to break up. And we're kind of going back towards that now, like when T-Mobile bought Sprint very recently. But I think it's very interesting that they always bring up AT&T now, because it's the most recent one to really discuss anymore of the United States actually doing what they purport capitalism to do, which is actually breed competition to happen. That's what people think capitalism is supposed to do, even though the ism has capital in it, so it's the belief in money. So isn't the belief in competition? Because if you want to just gain a bunch of money, you create a moat around yourself, you become the own company, and you extract all the rents like he was just talking about. That's what capitalism is, if your belief in capital. And in fact, that's what Warren Buffett even talks about when he wants to be an investor. I'm only talking about these big names because that's what it's easier for people to understand, these descriptions. Warren Buffett always talks about he wants to invest in a company that has a moat around it. So take for that what you will. But people only talk about the AT&T breakup as the most recent time of antitrust being applied by the United States, because that's exactly how long it has been. It has been decades and decades since any sort of actual meaningful antitrust has been enforced. Another easy example for people to understand today could be when Facebook bought Instagram, and that was allowed to go through. That's allowed to go through during Obama's administration. That should have been blocked. Obviously, there's no hindsight needed. And even in the communications, which have been surfaced, and it isn't sort of liable or anything, but has been surfaced, that the gist of what Zuckerberg even said in emails to his staff, when they said, "Wow, this is too much money to buy Instagram. Why are you doing this? It is so expensive." And he just said, "It's better to buy than to compete." So he literally saying, "I am buying Instagram so I don't have to compete." So that is obvious across the board. There's been multiple tax incentives that favor the incumbents. They have allowed, various companies to buy each other. It's happening in grocery. I think even what is happening now, there's one company that's going to be buying Tylenol. I guess Tylenol company buyer. I can't type whatever. I don't give a shit. Kimberly-Clark to acquire Tylenol maker Kenvue. So even another company, like what is Kimberly-Clark, known for brands like Huggies and Kleenex, is acquiring Kenvue, which makes Tylenol, and Band-Aid and Listerine. So more of those, again, over-the-counter little health products, not just medications, but diapers and Kleenex, are going to be under, again, one company. That is additionally insane corporate consolidation, because now they're going to sell you the bandage and the ointment and everything in between to just take care of yourself while you're still not going to the doctor because you don't have healthcare. Because they use healthcare as a cudgel to keep you employed, so you don't, actually have freedom. Like, again, people purport capitalism to allow you to have, which obviously it doesn't. So, just talk about that. About the bells, talks about it again. We're having corporate consolidation every year, and that includes even with AI right now, with Mark Zuckerberg not buying Scale AI, but he's employing all the people that worked for Scale AI. So they don't fold or anything. They just start to work for, and they even hire the CEO of Scale AI. And so what is that? What is that? It's like, it is just fantastic in a terrifying sense. So I guess terrific, and in the terrifying sense as well. Same root word, whatever. Of finding ways to not only try and not have acquisition or merger be in the conversation between who you are trying to actually acquire, But they're doing that like financially, and they're doing it like human resources Department of Labor-esque. So it is absolutely insane, the consolidation that's happening, whether through handshakes or actual legal documents. So from there, I'm going to skip ahead to the 27-minute mark. Let's see what this mark now says. Let's see, 27. All right, let's see.
Defining question of our time, which one works?
100%. I think that's a very methods that DeepSeek was used in Europe. They just
Build AI. On the other hand,
in Europe, they just happen to be all working in Silicon Valley.
I think it's
Okay, so here's the question I think they must have been focused in on.
a good segue into your 2012 book, Why Nations Fail. We're discussing how America could fall behind in the AI race. And it's interesting, you're kind of highlighting that on the one hand, there are some benefits to this top-down communist structure where you can set the agenda and the tone for the nation, the tone being, we love engineers and we love people who build AI. On the other hand, it can be a problem when you don't have the competitive forces of capitalism at work. It seems as though this is going to be sort of the defining question of our time, which one works.
100%. I think that.
So the question saying that we either have capitalism, which has competition, if we say just in terms of AI then. So if we have the system of capitalism, which has competition, or if you have top-down supposed communism, again, as it's how the Chinese Communist Party describes itself, so that's what they say they are, even though communism doesn't necessarily say you have to be a dictator. But anyway, gotta ignore that. Let's just use their words and still poke holes in it. They're saying that it's either capitalism or communism, either top-down or capitalistic competition. So you have an argument to say, well, it is a case of top-down in China. They do have a top-down structure where the Communist Party is always in control. And if a CEO, they do have businesses and companies that do compete with each other, but CEO does something that they don't like, they can remove them. You can look up the CEO of Alibaba and see what happened with him. However, even in saying what their premise is, we don't have competition right now. We have various companies who have stifled competition for decades that now are the only ones that have the money to even compete. The stock market is just 7 companies right now, if you take that as a measure of anything. And even with that competition, it again wasn't competition. They were acquiring companies, or they were either by purchasing companies outright or getting enough investor money for a long enough time that they can outlast them until other smaller companies fold because they don't have the funds to keep up. And then after they acquire everybody, they start to jack up prices. And I don't have to even say the main companies you're probably thinking of. There's several companies that have done that now. Once you squeeze out competition and investors actively do that, they keep feeding you money until they know, like, okay, as they keep this big one alive, until the other ones die. And then I'll get the rents after that, and then just do a bunch of rent sinking and just get a bunch of money in the back end, much more than trying to compete and make a good product. So in that premise, for all of Ed's life, obviously, and all of my life, real competition has not happened at all. It's been worse and worse every year. So them even saying like only one of those 2 things can happen in regards to AI is still insane. It's neither of those are, and in fact, I would think that if you actually had a goal of AI being good, that communist structure of a stability of, hey, we need to have the best AI at all. We're gonna give you whatever resources, whatever money that you need. We even pay you a pretty decent salary rather than you did an engineering job for some other company. And do that for as long as it takes because we have to win this thing. And that's a guaranteed thing versus like, and I'm not talking against democracy and voting, but I am saying if you have some of the party who actually doesn't believe in democracy, like Trump's entire administration and absolutely most, if not all Republicans, then they're not even trying to like breed a stability of being an engineer and you can compete and we need AI to be the best, so go do that. They are trying to use that as a method or term, I guess you'd say, or as a game board to extract money for themselves. So they may or may not care about AI. Some people in there might. I know Peter Thiel does, because and JD Vance is his guy to get his foot in the door to say, hey, do what I want. But they're using that current paradigm to say, okay, you need XYZ funds, give me a bunch of money so I can build a ballroom, and then I will let you do whatever you want with AI. So they're not doing it in terms of they want for any sort of for the nation or anything. It's all in terms of I just want the money from it. I don't care about what it does to anything. So there are two paradigms that they're even going to discuss or talk about right now completely isn't even talking about reality. They're talking about a textbook definition of what capitalism might be, textbooks written by capitalists, and then a textbook of what communism might be or mean in textbooks written by capitalists. So they are starting their premise and their discussion and their question off of completely faulty bases that like they don't even have a base to discuss on. So that annoys me of like they're saying so much in their question without trying to define it or give a baseline every single time. And they do that all this time just to talk past the point to where they can just say, see, capitalism is best or whatever, or without even actually discussing the merits of it. So this again, moronic sentences, moronic statements from these people. All right. So that's enough of that part. Let's move on to the 33rd minute, looks like. Let's see. Let's go over here. Oh, too far. Let's see. Hopefully it's a good spot that I actually found. Okay.
Was definitely no genius, but he did know some of the things he was doing in terms of killing people and creating an enormously powerful secret service, secret police. So somebody who has the wrong incentives and the wrong motivations, even when they are talented, could do a lot of damage. So the democratic system, via checks and balances, civil society mobilization, ability to change and kick out politicians when they don't do what they're supposed to do, I think creates a lot of pathways for not falling victim to that.
Given all of that, what do you make of what's happening in America today? What do you make of Trump's administration thus far? What do you think, what kinds of impacts do you think it will have on the economy?
I think institutions are really the secret sauce for the United States. The US is one of the most innovative economies in the world, and that comes because people are fairly confident that they can do new things and succeed. The American advantage in finance is also about institutions.
So yeah, I'm not going to discuss the institutions part. That gets a bit wonky if you actually wanted to dig into it. But in the discussing of that, democracy does allow it blocks a lot of pathways in which a dictator to get to power, even though it didn't stop at this time. That also starts to the first reason why how this even happened is that we only have two-party system because it's first past the post instead of ranked choice voting. Except New York, they have ranked choice voting, and guess who won? Somebody who wants to help working families. So go figure. And also, how do they fund their elections? Public financing. Oh, look, now they got somebody who actually cares about working families to try and help them, and try no matter even if it is some sort of quote unquote lofty goal. None of his goals are even lofty. In fact, they're laughable in Europe because Europe already has the things he's trying to put forward. So whatever. But if you ignore that, if you start to say or believe that capitalism has failed or democracy has failed or whatever in the current paradigm, what you're going to start to see or discuss is that it all comes down to capitalism eroding democracy. There are conversations too of saying that democracy can't exist without capitalism, or capitalism can't exist without democracy. It tries to tie those two together. And that just literally isn't the case. Why is that? Because capitalism says, I want to take all the money and I will do whatever I need to get that money. And so to get that money, all you have to do is pay off a bunch of politicians. If money is speech now from the Citizens United decision, then you don't even have to do that. You can just make a huge super PAC to put the money wherever you want for the candidates that you want. And you already have all the money, so you continue to accumulate more. You get to put in the candidates you want again and again and again. And so that saying that it's failed because like that democracy is failed or whatnot because of the different pathways that could block dictators from arriving, that depends on the parties that you have. We only have 2 parties, and it depends on who they actually speak to or answer to, and both parties only answer to money right now. Holistic and the leadership, both of them, both parties just want money. And how that even happened is also because we don't have publicly financed, election cycles at all. So that I don't think there's a problem with how many elections that we have. It's kind of the point. So we can, get a scorecard or report card, you want to call it, for every person that we elect. But because we purposefully didn't have publicly financed elections, then it's all about just whatever money you can go and knock on doors of, hey, I want to help you, poor person. But hey, poor person, can you give me $1? Like, that's still insane that has to happen to still build the movement at all. But the comparison again is there's only one party, which is the money party, versus the rest of us who don't have any money. So again, it's the premise of comparing that we've been and even starting to get into like, we're the best finance capital of the world. It's like, well, yeah, because the rich people want to make sure that their money is perfectly safe, and so they're going to find the United States, kind of just happen to become this finance mecca. I mean, that's kind of how London is still even doing anything, like how Europe, I don't want to go into why other countries may or may not be quote unquote innovative or whatever, because it's still like in terms of capitalism speak. But London used to be the finance capital, and then, World War I, World War II, blah, blah, blah. The United States became the hegemon, so everyone's gonna put the money where whoever the hegemon is. So, yeah. So just another tiny bit of just like, again, poor premise. Like they're starting with such a faulty premise to even discuss any of these questions. All right, looks like I have one more minute here, minute mark. Let's see, 50. Let's just.
Example, in my country of birth, in Turkey or in Hungary, you see the costs have been quite extreme.
Yeah, how does that play out? How do those costs materialize?
Well, first of all, I think very important projects that are forward-looking don't get funded. Today it's very difficult, for example, to get funding for mRNA vaccines. And those were going to potentially play an important role in fighting cancer and other sort of diseases for which we could, develop new vaccine-based approaches. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But even more importantly, I think when the autonomy of universities starts being threatened, people become more timid in their risk-taking, and that risk-taking there involves going against established ways or things that powerful actors believe. So I mentioned earlier on, in China, the top-down structure is really very costly. I think one of the costs you can see very clearly is in academia. In Chinese academia, despite the fact that you have very talented people selected into it and you have high degree of engineering or other expertise, it's much more political.
So it still gets very difficult, and it gets difficult to talk about the university bits, and I really should start writing scripts to make it clearer in my description, but Darren is saying that in the top-down structure from China, that it's harder to be innovative or study interesting things, perhaps outside of like science and math, perhaps, or whatever, and other disciplines, because you can't go against the single party that existed for, decades, hundreds of years, and whatnot. I would still argue that there are similar things that you have the free that you get what you get blocked on studying in universities here. So for example, almost every finance, economics, and very technical engineering faculty at universities has a working relationship with companies, with a bunch of different companies. So that would start to mean that they're feeding them students, and then the company's feeding them information of oh yeah, we want you to teach this. And I talked about this in terms of training, but it also is in terms of I talked about in terms of training, in that since companies don't want to pay to train you, that as over longer time been offloaded onto universities, and so you pay to go to schools, you get paid to train yourself to go get the job. Insane. And I talked about how that the new part, people are trying to get people okay. Capitalists are trying to get people okay with you paying the company to go work for them. So not only will you pay for college, but you'll go and pay Amazon to work for them, so you get skills. Absolutely insane and just disgusting. But in that same connection, they're also capitalist companies are telling and teaching the university professors what to teach. So what does that matter? Do you still have the obviously hard truths in math and in science, in healthcare and whatnot, that is just a hard truth. It's there. It's been tested. It's just a fact. But there are a lot of things in economics and finance and business or whatever that are just fuzziness. Those business economics, those disciplines specifically, have tried to take things from electrical engineering and different copulas and probability to try and shove that into their disciplines to say that they are more concrete hard truths, and so kind of hiding the fact that business and economics are more social sciences, more of a trying to just think of people as a group, so you can try and test where the wind is blowing, so you can kind of plan your next move, which that is totally fine to do as long as you're aware that some things, maybe could be tested, and even if you see the same thing over and over for many years, it could still be the case that your assumption or your hypothesis in economics could still end up being wrong when rubber hits the road, when things actually happen. It's all just hypothesis and even if you make a hypothesis and you look in the past and the hypothesis seems to work in the past, doesn't still mean that hypothesis is true at all. It's more of just correlation doing. You're just finding correlations so you can try and use it in the next period or next situation, and then you still find it fails. Anyway, but since that's the case, that means that if you start to build institution or build a department in your university based off these different quote unquote hard truths that are being passed between the professor and the company who's maybe paying the professor for research, grant money, or just directly because maybe he holds an actual job, but he's a professor a couple nights a week now or something, or he does it, or maybe only one semester or a couple nights a week, or he takes a year off and just year on, year off or something, whatever, multiple different things. But it starts to be the case that if you also want to go and study there, perhaps it won't matter in undergrad. Maybe you could think of something different than what they're just, trying to shove it down your throat in business, economics, and finance or whatever. But maybe even masters. But for sure, if you were trying to get a PhD at these universities, so a PhD where actually, go and research and spend all your time researching, thinking of new things, trying to apply, trying to prove maybe something that someone else tried to prove 50 years ago, trying to make your own hypothesis that you're going to prove that's brand new or whatever. You're still beholden to people who have thought in one way for so long. And those people have thought in that way. Not only have they thought in that way for so long, but they're beholden to these companies who require your mind to be pigeonholed in one set of thinking. So the stuff you'll be taught as right or wrong and whatever assumptions you make are still based in a specific paradigm in the United States and in any other super capitalistic country. And I'm still not even just going to say which ever economics economic way of thinking is the right one or a good one to test or the middle ground or whatever. That is all I am saying is that in the current paradigm, the thing that Darren is saying that the universities in China do is done here as well, of like they're a top down like shoving of what you need to think at a university. And I completely disagree with using that towards like, oh, the colleges are too liberal or whatever. That paradigm is like nothing to talk about. It's correctly and good that you go to university to meet people from other backgrounds which you've never met before because you've only lived in a single city in Montana, and you haven't left your whole life. So it's good that you go to university in Texas or California or Washington or New York or whatever and broaden your horizons, meet people that are also from not only other states but other countries. And so you learn from their experiences and what they've done, and they tell you the stories of what actually happened in their life. You tell them. And so that's why you're like, oh, wow, the world isn't just this little tiny thing that I did that I learned when I was a kid. There's way more out there that I need to learn. And so that's why it's correct and good that people in universities become more liberal, and liberal not necessarily even the political term, but just the open to other people's ways of life and ways of thinking. But in terms of like the hard, like business and finance and economics, like textbooks and ways of learning, those are top down. Those are, nope, these are the truths. These are these functions that we took from engineering. Finance is a bit more hard numbers, right? But again, that's also just a bunch of forecasting models that they're trying to use, and some of them are even more insane. Like the CAPM model was like nothing. I don't even know how it became anything. But all it is to say is that for terms of like when we're talking about AI, finance, and economics, and business, the top down in China is, we also have a top down here in the United States of those disciplines. So yeah, anyway. Yep. So that's all I want to talk about there. And now I need to skip over to this other podcast I listened to on the same day. I'll have to find it. Yeah, let's see. Let's see. Because I thought it was really funny. Let's see. Not the latest episode. We're going to listen to Ezra Klein. I'm not going to intro him. Everybody should know who this guy is at this point. So, see, 1024. And there's only one mark here. He said even more hilarious things. He had this really, shitty take, and this is how Democratic Party beats Trump. And now Mamdani won, so completely destroys his moronic statements in this podcast that he did. So, or in this like, I don't know, just speech, I guess. So, but I have the spot from the podcast on the 24th. And it looks like at the 18-minute mark. So I do that. Looks like I only marked this one spot. So let's see. Let's go over here. All right. Let's see what I had here.
That play out.
Yeah, I think there are essentially several reasons why the full potential of a suite of technologies may not be realized or may not be realized quickly. One is monopoly. If one...
Oops. Let's resume it, and it'll be the actual one. And then
economic populace, so we have things that are common now.
So 18. All right. Let's go over here. It's kind of funny that I picked the 18-minute mark of both of these podcasts. Funny. Anyway, let's see.
It didn't used to be like that. This is a change. This gets called class de-alignment. Not my favorite term.
It's very catchy.
Yeah, very catchy. But talk me through class de-alignment. What is it? What's the story behind it?
The basic story is, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the vast majority of working class people and Americans in general said, what they think of when the Democratic Party is that's the party of working people. And my version of the story anyway, is that Democrats started to move away from their focus on working class issues in the 1970s and 80s with, you know, this sort of onset of deregulation, and then eventually leading into the Clinton years when, you know, he signs NAFTA, which has devastating effects on communities in different parts of the country, leading to not just job loss, but community devastation. And the Democrats, you know, there's a great paper called Compensate the Losers that sort of gets into this. And that's basically what they said is, you guys got screwed. Okay. But, you know, we're going to do different kinds of redistribution that's going to make you whole again. We're not going to necessarily get you good jobs again. We're not going to necessarily give you the social status that you used to have when you had high paying jobs that you felt good about and that were meaningful in your community. But we're going to make sure that, you know, you have something like a decent education. We're going to get you.
And yeah, so that pretty much obviously never happened. Both parties since, you know, 70s, 80s and up till now are completely taken over by money. That's why we have to do, you know, people power, grassroots organizing like Mamdani just did. But more to the point of compensating people and saying, hey, yeah, you want a job that, you know, you like anymore, but we're just going to give you money or give you a little bit of a thing. That obviously didn't happen. But let's say it did. Let's say that it did happen, that yeah, we did NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. So we sent a bunch of jobs to build different products in other countries, and we don't have to say other countries. Well, mostly other. Just we can say other countries broadly, but mostly China. But then you're saying that, well, we're gonna have all those profits at the company, and so we might give you a little bit of those profits. So even if you were to do that, you're also saying that there's no more work to be done. We're just going to do a North American Free Trade Agreement. We have a bunch of products made over in other countries, assuming we even need those products to be made anyway, firstly. And then we're going to maybe give you a little bit of a ham sandwich once a week or even less to try and compensate you while you don't have anything else to do, even though there are plenty of things to still do. Were still to do back then, still to do now. But my solution to that would be a jobs guarantee, and that would be the government funded, obviously, jobs guarantee. So you don't have to even just say that we're gonna just have a floor of like a higher floor, which should be like this all shows happen at the same time, is a higher more funding for like SNAP benefits type of thing that helps more people at like a higher whatever their wages. But a jobs guarantee of there are things that we want done. For example, one way that we got out of, the Great Depression and whatnot was the highway system that we have right now. There was a big government's jobs program that not only did something good for the country, but also put a bunch of people to work. We can start to complain that maybe we should have had better public transit instead, like a bunch of trains and monorails or whatever, and better bus services and whatnot. But that's what we got. We can argue about making the car culture, which is shitty, but anyway, still, it was a jobs program that put money not just to be spent on, not to be spent on a yacht or to spent on a Rolex from some guy on a news channel saying that you poor people just need to budget harder while he wears his Rolex. But a thing that's like giving people a baseline that they could fall back on, a jobs guarantee that if it's truly the case that there aren't any other, quote unquote private sector jobs, even though they're not really private sector because they're getting a bunch of handouts from the government and tax breaks anyway. So it's technically still a public job, but anyway, but again, a directly job from the government of cleaning up parks, continuing to rebuild our roads, maybe a government pool of nurses. We keep saying there's like a nursing and doctor shortage. Maybe there's a baseline of nursing jobs guarantee, and not only in that jobs guarantee will they like teach you some nursing skills, but they maybe teach you to become a full nurse. But maybe before that there's teaching you to do like some of the more quote unquote like more the easier tasks that nurses may have to do. Maybe there's doing checks, not doing full cleanup and whatnot, but maybe they're just doing like going around and doing some of the paperwork, or they're doing some of the interaction with the patient and whatnot. There's different things that a jobs guarantee can have in very different sectors that you always have a floor. And that, what would that do? It gives people to have a baseline to fall back on. money that would inject into the economy, because if you're taking that job guaranteed job, that is like your fallback plan. And so that's your fallback plan. The money they get for it, you're going to be spending. It's going to go from the government to you. You're still going to pay taxes on the income. Then you go and spend that money over here, and that money is going to come back. It's going to come back in a circle. How money is supposed to happen? The velocity of money is all that matters. The number of dollars don't. The velocity of that money is what matters. So, and saying in this paper and all these other things of like compensate the losers, we're going to be moving jobs over to different places. There were solutions to handle that. But one thing that they get more worried about in terms of a jobs guarantee is capitalists get worried about having no unemployment. Well, because if no unemployment means that people actually have power to negotiate better salaries, better working conditions. And it also, takes away the fear that they can instill in the populace by having the fear of, and not just not having a job, but in America, not having healthcare. So that fear is very important to the people in power. It's very important for the rich. It's very important for anyone who's like in power in the United States. The vast majority. There are some who probably don't think this way. There's some who probably don't even think that they think that way, but they do. When they don't want to push forward or Medicare for all, thinking about anything else. Even Obama said, I don't want to have Medicare for all happen because I don't want those profit-seeking jobs to be disappeared. Because he didn't want to, he also wanted that to remain as such, still a cudgel no matter what. So, just wanted to bring up that little tidbit. I don't want to listen to the whole thing of this. A lot of dumb questions from Ezra as always. Again, missing a baseline of what the premise of the question should even be based on. Talks past a lot of points, skips some stuff. So, but that's just how his questions go. He skips a lot of things. He's asking questions to try and make his point, not to actually discuss the problems. But yeah, so let's see. This is amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin. Why do I want to talk about Bitcoin? Because when was it? JP Morgan has allowed Bitcoin to be collateral for loans. So that also happened on the 24th. So a lot of stuff happened on that day. I don't care, Bloomberg, whatever. Not going to read through the article, but JP Morgan to allow Bitcoin and Ether as collateral in crypto push. So maybe I can find a free article. Okay, Yahoo. So let's see. JP Morgan will allow institutional clients to use Bitcoin and Ethereum as collateral for loans, marking a major shift in how Wall Street's largest bank integrates digital assets into its core lending operations. So one thing that I don't know how many people know about in this crypto business is that there's a lot of companies who used to actually be companies that attempted to compete and produce products that they've started just becoming Bitcoin, Bitcoin pass-throughs. I forget the name of company that just buys Bitcoin now. Very silly question, but there are, starts with the M. What is it? Wonder, is there anybody in here that might know? I don't think there's anybody in chat at all. So that's fine. Let's see. MicroStrategy. Yep. So MicroStrategy, MicroStrategy. So you can look them up if you want. They still are like a very tiny, is an American company that provides business intelligence and mobile software. So BI tools, blah, blah, blah. But, Petrock no more, JP Morgan to accept Bitcoin, Ethereum as collateral. So, okay, whatever. So, JP Morgan is going to start to allow Bitcoin to be used as collateral for loans. So, insane. And so now there are companies who started to be just like holders of Bitcoin, and that's their whole business strategy or profit strategy. MicroStrategy is kind of the most well-known ones of this, in that they just buy Bitcoin, and that's their whole, they just put that bunch of Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and that's all they're doing. So what they're saying that they're providing is that they are providing more institutional investors and people who don't necessarily know about Bitcoin or whatever to invest in Bitcoin through them. So like a completely insane, like churn of how to invest in Bitcoin. Now, what you can see here, now that I just searched this up in this, just from here, looking them up, Strategy stock falls to 7-month low, and why the leveraged Bitcoin play is losing steam. So they were doing, like I just described, trying to be buying Bitcoin, and that's how other people can invest in it. So that was like their profit strategy. As Bitcoin goes up, your stock will go up. So invest in us, and they can buy more Bitcoin or whatever. But I don't invest in Bitcoin. But as you can see now, that I do know that it has been like falling. I'm not sure exactly how heavily, but Bitcoin has fallen, and so MicroStrategy has fallen. And so that also would mean that any loans that Bitcoin has backstopped for supposedly institutional clients only, those loans start to be shaky. And if those loans start to be shaky, then what does that mean? That means that the issue there is JP Morgan Chase, and maybe it was also at the time, but obviously now, is for all intents and purposes too big to fail. And so what are they doing now? If they start to allow institutional or any investor at all to use Bitcoin as collateral for loans, what does that mean? That means that very easily and very quickly, I don't care what they say, due diligence, finance companies always say due diligence until they go crying for a bailout from the government again. All these big companies that are too big to fail just go and cry anyway. What is going to happen and what will happen is that since JP Morgan Chase is too big to fail, they're going to give loans to Bitcoin folks, their Bitcoin friends. And then what could happen is as Bitcoin falls, then JP Morgan Chase starts to say, oh, I mean, we're losing so much money, Mr. Government. Can we please have some money now? Because we, gave out these loans and now they're losing value because we gave it to Bitcoin because we're insane. So can you give me some money? And so through JP Morgan Chase being so large, they can start to say, and they're going to start to say, this is just the beginnings of it. This would probably, something like I'm describing, it'll probably take, I guess in the old world, it'd probably take like 10 years, but with the pace of investing in AI and the pace of just every bit of information now, maybe not 10 years, maybe only 4, but the timeline from, Jamie Dimon saying Bitcoin is silly to now you can use it as collateral for loans. And then here's a bunch of loans for your Bitcoin, sir. And then, oh, those are failing, poop. Okay, government, give me some money, too big to fail. You don't want all the bank accounts to crash. So I think it'll just hasten it. And this is, you could say, I don't know, call me a Luddite for not having crypto or whatever. But yeah, that's what I worry about this. Very funny. I'm glad I put this on as a bit to talk about back on the 24th. And now, what is today? The 6th. And now we have MicroStrategy, their stock flailing because of that. So let's see. What happened here, though? Let's see. MicroStrategy stock, $230 support aligns with Bitcoin's 100K floor. Dip buyers getting what? Dip buyers getting what? Dip buyers getting ready. So dip buyers getting ready to buy the dip. Insane. And I'm not going to talk about the insane and disgusting gambling culture we have right now, but yeah, this is just part of it. This Bitcoin dip buying MicroStrategy, not caring about their actual BI tool that they're making, whether good or bad, I don't know. They're just buying Bitcoin and trying to say that's the entire investment value of their company. Bitcoin, stake and NBA gambling and gambling ad on every sports game. All just insane. Just sad too. The other thing I was going to talk about was Target's recent job cuts. I guess I'll pull it up, see what articles show up from there. AI washing and the massive layoffs hitting the economy. And this isn't even specific to Target. This was the day before, so maybe we're just going to bring it up. But this article headline, I'll click it, but it's not really much to read because you can read it yourself. But AI washing the massive layoffs. One thing that used to be the driver of whether a company was doing well or not, one of the drivers was, were they doing layoffs and how big were they? So before AI can be used as a scapegoat or whatever you want to say. If a company was laying off people, for a good while, it was the case that, oh, they must not be performing well if they have to lay off people. And the paradigm shift of that, of how many people you have employed, really maintained for a long time, and if people only cared about stock price, that would affect your stock price. You laid off people, your stock price would go down. And you could also see that in like how many job postings they would have. If you ever applied for a job before, and you see like it's always up and like, hey, I've applied to that specific job posting or something with the same description multiple times. I never got a call. Does anybody ever get a call? How do we know anyone got a call for this job? Is it a real job posting? Whatever. Companies would keep like from not laying off that many people or trying to keep people hired. They do a bunch of job postings to make it seem like that they're hiring and that they're getting new people to make their company appear good so that their stock can be either maintain price or increase in price year over year. So that was the paradigm for a long time. And without getting into these terrible people, but one partial start to change to this paradigm shift was when Elon Musk came and fired a bunch of people from Twitter, and then still able to have like a product that seemed to be up and running. There's a lot of assumptions in there, because the assumptions say is like, what was Twitter doing at the time? What were those people that were at Twitter that supposedly were able to be fired? Where they could have been building a bunch of different products that we didn't see. There's more that people are doing than what the front facing product that you would see. Whether you ever liked Twitter or anything like that at all. But Elon Musk being an insane person, and somehow having one good idea once, so that must mean he must be smart in entirety of life. Some people will try to attach that and say, oh, maybe I can lay off people and just put that into my profits by the stock, but I get paid by stock price. So now I can lay off people. It'll make our profit spread look good this quarter, and that'll take up the stock price. And so then I can now cash out my stock, and now me, who is compensated as a CEO mostly in stock, I get more money. So I can now slowly start to find a way to just lay off people, and that'll look good. People will buy the stock, and then there'll be profits for shareholders and stock gains for shareholders, blah, blah, blah. So the paradigm of the people being hired or being still hired at your company and the job postings has shifted at that time. And now that shifting has just been accelerated, that people can say, oh, I can lay off these people because AI can do it. And it's not even to say, you don't even really have to say as a CEO or position of leadership that AI can do it. All they have to do is say, they can say AI can do it, but it doesn't have to be true. And it mostly just has to be a belief, that the CEO's belief from a blog post he read from another CEO that, oh yeah, AI can do this job with this person I've never spoken to in my life. You're fired. And then then instantiate the AI. And then if the AI starts to fail, they can take a senior engineer and say, oh, senior engineer, you can code a little bit, but you're now have to get on this phone call because I don't want to actually prove or say that I was wrong at all. And I'm not going to hire those people back. Now you, senior engineer, go take these phone calls. And then just make sure that the AI stays up and running or something like that. So work more, because now you're terrified of losing your job because I just fired a bunch of people. So work double hours, or now you're laid off too. So there's a lot of fuzziness in there, because a lot of these tech jobs, right, they're salary. So you don't know how many hours they're necessarily working. You might have a person talking to other people, whatever. But all that to say is that with Elon Musk being the first terrible person to do terrible moronic things for decades now, and now with AI existing and people starting to say that, oh, it can do a lot of this menial work or whatever, even if it's terrible at it, it's giving these companies a broader breadth of being able to say we're laying people off not because we're doing poorly, but because we can now with AI. They're saying it, they're doing it. Whether it would actually be the case is another thing. Because I can even bring up now, why else is that the case? Well, that's because who just asked for not a bailout, but a backstop from the government? OpenAI backstop government. So I don't care what Sam Altman said in his post. His CEO had said, so I guess to give context, and if you even know about OpenAI, you must know this, but the CFO of OpenAI said yesterday that she wants a government guarantee to do these big investments. She said it, and then most directly. And then Sam Altman came out and said, firstly, he said that isn't the case, but then in vaguer terms, he said, yes, I do want a government backstop. So if it's the full case of AI is going to take your job, we're going to fire you, and have AI do your job. But then the people who are providing these LLMs, it's not even AI, it's a large language model. It's a text predictor, some text predictor to predict different text, but it still doesn't, again, it does not know anything. It never will. It's just predicting. I'm not going to argue with you whether you believe a person is a predicting machine in their brain versus a computer, whatever. I don't care to have that argument. But if it's the case that these companies are going to replace people with AI, and let's say it's that they fully can. Let's say that AI could do a full person's job. At the same time, they're asking the government to backstop their investments and invest in them and make them because they're going to be too big to fail or whatever. Then again, I would press, as I always do with these too big to fail descriptions, that if it's too big to fail, then it must be owned by the government and all the benefits have to go to the entire populace. And so what are those benefits? Whatever profit or money you think you're going to make from that tool, from that AI tool, those are now actually money spread across the entire populace to have at least some basic standard of basic existence. That's what all of that is leading to. If this AI can do your job and they need a government backstop to do it, then you now are a government enterprise owned by the government, and the government's going to spread the profits, the fruits of that AI labor to everybody. Obviously, it's not what they want. They want to become billionaires to have all the money to themselves, still with the backing of the government. So it's once again what Bernie Sanders always says: socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor. So that's what they're literally asking for in the most direct way. The CFO did not misspeak. She said exactly what she wanted to say. Sam Altman only responded in some sort of softening just because, even though, again, in his little softening, he still said the same thing again. So all these are all connected. They've been to get higher returns on their stock. They would be wanting to fire people, but that had affected their stock because if they fire people, it makes it look like they don't have enough growth. Not going to even talk about the need for endless growth, which is also disgusting. But again, all those connected of socialism for the rich, individualism for the poor. Anyway, all right. So I have an economics post here. Let me pull this up. I have a wonderful our economics post here. So let's see. Silicon Valley has China envy, and that reveals a lot about America. So let's see. Let me look at the article. I probably can't read it because okay. The fascination with China's ability to build things in America. To build things America struggles with, from bridges to advanced tech, risk a dangerous miscalculation about what drives China. So let's see. Is this a joke? They are the ones that decide what we build. So I wish I could read this. I probably could in some way, but I don't want to do it at least online. But Silicon Valley are the ones that decide what we build. That is a premise of that this article. That is the most insane thing. They have done nothing but like social media and like internet things. So Silicon Valley is people in Silicon Valley and the investors there are the same people who have blocked other investments in other things. So if you were to have better public transit, right, what would that do? That would harm Elon Musk's car company, which is not a tech company, it's a car company, Tesla. And so he wouldn't want that public good to happen. He'd want you to be forced to buy his car. So, and where is he? Silicon Valley. They also wouldn't want you to have multiple other They wouldn't want you to have free healthcare because then you wouldn't go and work for their companies for, lower wages, or you wouldn't go and work for them to do AI labeling. At least now, there's other things in the past, but Silicon Valley having envy of not being able to build things in America, they have the people and the rich people that invested there for decades are the ones who actively blocked like various good things that could have helped America because they were making money off of those things. So them having any sort of envy of things not being built is entirely the people's their fault and the investors and them's fault. So having that envy at all is really funny, because they're literally the meme of the gentleman wearing the hot dog costume saying, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. Anyway, now let's move on to, I had another podcast snippet. Let's see if that's any good. Oh, I lost my tab. Okay. Apple Podcast. And I will not listen to any comments about me listening to all these podcasts on Apple Podcast. Let's see. Another Prof G bullcrap from the 27th. Let's see. Load more. 27. How China's AI efficiency could gut the U.S. economy. So there's only one part here. Let's see. 20-minute mark. Let's see.
Support for the show.
Nope. Shut up. 20 minute. Yeah, 20 minute. 20 minute. There we go. Let's see what happens here.
It has become incredibly reliant on AI. Now, I want to go through in a second just the history of efficiency in the business world, but I will pause there and see if you have any reactions to those numbers.
So earlier in the year, we predicted that the rivers of capital into the U.S. were going to reverse flow. That was mostly sort of right. And that is, EU stocks have done really well. But also, to be fair, American stocks are up 12, 13%. The S&P is up. So clearly there's still massive flows of capital into the U.S. The most dangerous own goal over the medium and long term is there really has been a chill placed on the inbound rivers of human capital, the inflow. And that is some colleges are projecting there's going to be 20 to 40% fewer foreign applications. Every talented PhD student and every world-class researcher in the world had one thing in common. They had either come through U.S. universities, been trained here, or would seriously consider coming to work for our universities. And now what's happened? China's figured this out. China produces 120,000 PhDs every year. That's 3 times what the U.S. produces. In 2024, China's AI research publications, the output, the amount of peer-reviewed credible research matched the combined output of the U.S., U.K., and European Union. And now
I don't want to talk about too much of like the university bits again because I talked about it earlier. So I'll just put that in the clip or something. But as I discussed before, I forget why. I don't really know why I clipped this particular point. Maybe there's something in the longer clip that I needed the whole thing for. But if he's just complaining about the flows of AI talent, people, whatever, the structure and paradigm of the universities in China and the United States is the same. And that is to say, there are rich people that are in power, whether they're rich through specific political means or just by having a bunch of money. Political means in China versus having a bunch of money in the United States, even though both of them are both rich, whatever. But both still, I don't want to describe the whole thing again, but both still shove down a certain bit of this is the way the world works paradigm. And the United States universities in like economics and finance and business, you have one way of saying this is the truth for the majority, like especially if you want a job or if you want to get your PhD, if you want to get your dissertation approved so you can actually, finish your PhD and pass whatever. You have a paradigm, and that is towards whatever agrees with capitalism. The vast majority. As long as you nibble around the edges of saying, oh, can we do a little bit of equality over here, a little bit of better SNAP benefits, those kind of things, you'll pass through. If you try and blow up the system, you'll probably have a harder time getting your PhD passed through. And then, of course, on the China side, the universities are all top-down taught of what you're allowed to teach and think about and do whatever. So, and again, like the number of PhDs being produced it doesn't necessarily do anything because, I mean, you could still say, like, what did you learn and teach or whatever. So anyway, discussing about the issue of flows of where people can actually study in the United States or not, but the same paradigm of there are only still certain rich and powerful people that inject these universities with different ways of being forced to think, and you still have to play in that world. It's like the same as like office politics. They try and force you to think a certain way to even keep your job. Whether you're right or not, they want you to do their stupid shit to keep your job. So, anyway, don't overlook. I think I probably clipped this because there's a longer bit I want to go on, but I didn't want to hear Scott's voice for that long, so I'm not going to play all of that. Okay, so I had one more. I think that I wanted to bring up. I suppose I could. I did listen to this whole podcast, the Capital Isn't podcast, but I did not. Let me see if something good shows up from that beginning, because there's only from Richard Taylor. I'm not sure I forgot to put a timestamp in. There could be some good things, like if I just play it from where it is right now. Oh, let's see. I only got into the 21 minutes of it. Let me see if I can't go to the 10-minute mark and see if it'll jog my memory of what I was trying to play from here.
You were saying that we're all humans and humans are irrational. And it's
I don't use the word irrational. I would say that we're human and we don't behave according to the models that economists write down and call rational.
Oh, did I go too far to the beginning? Where am I? Oh, I must have. So yeah, I mean, that's a good little statement there. It's just Richard Taylor, Nobel Prize winning economist. He did a lot of like behavioral economics kind of like type of things, psychological biases and whatnot. So a lot of behavioral economics research. Was he? I think I forget now. Richard Taylor. Yeah, he's the economist you'd see actually in The Big Short. He's in that one scene with Selena Gomez at the poker table. So that's really funny. But yeah, so they were talking with him. So this is a good one for people to listen to if you like that movie and like the whatever, I don't know. But yeah, so I do like what he actually says here, which is people aren't irrational. They just don't fit these supposed models that economists have thought up. And that's what I've talked about before of social science of economics, social science of business, and social science of finance, because finance is a social science and they're trying to forecast and do crap. Accounting isn't social science. That's actual hard numbers. Finance, they try and make risk models and copulas or whatever to do XYZ, shit in your ass. But again, they're trying to take things from engineering and, electrical engineering and math or whatever to shove it into their way of thinking about the world to try and add hard truth to it, even though no matter how many different hypotheses and even no matter how many times your hypothesis seems to be right in the past, you're still in economics and business, you're still only doing correlations. And so those correlations could still fail in the future. And that's why, a lot of the things that people think up and have hypothesized are purely just in, the vast majority are in the past, looking at past data. They're not doing the actual hard, not actually doing the science. There are some that actually do the science of saying, if we just give people, $1,000 a month, universal basic income, what are the outcomes, and the outcomes are good or whatever. But it's really funny to not have to study that. It's like, yeah, you give me some money, I will do better because now you're giving me money. So anyway, let's see if I can I went too far. I was trying to look at just at the 9-minute mark or whatever. Let's see if something starts here.
Consider you so much so that you didn't get the first offer on the job market. And only with the explosion of data, particularly individual data, then you see that all these things are pervasive. And
no, that's right.
Today, in seminars, there's not a debate, I'm smarter than you because my agent is more rational, is I have better data than you have.
Yeah, no, that's right. So there's an old story. I gave a talk over in the economics department and talking about the retirement saving. I pointed out that the evidence is very strong that the saving rate increases with permanent income. Now, everybody says, of course, that's true. Where does Bezos have time to spend it? How many weddings in Venice can the guy have? So
Actually, on this, with the divorce, you can.
right. So how many yachts? So look, that's an obvious fact. The low-income people are basically spending everything, and then as income levels go up, the percentage that gets saved goes up. So I had presented data to show that. And Gary says, well, maybe the poor are saving via their children's human capital. I tried to keep a straight face. Didn't notice that many kids of poor people and going to Andover, but so I said, well, what about the childless poor? What are their saving rates? He was so fast. He says they might have nieces and nephews. So my friend Amos, this became like a thing with Amos and me, that he used to say,
All right. So yeah, not really going to look through to see what the points I wanted to pull in there. But, I think a lot of people actually know Richard Taylor at this point. If you've seen, well, everybody's probably seen The Big Short, and a lot of people see it multiple times. People talk about it. People post so many memes for decades, and way more now with like the, more stories coming out about the worries of AI overinvestment and whatnot. And they even use the memes of just of Christian Bale as Michael Burry making various faces at the computer. Anyway, decent enough talk. There's still some things that are like, there's still some bits that he does get wrong about, like the Affordable Care Act. In that it seems to me, at least from what he was saying, that people like their insurance, so let them keep it or whatever. Like some insane things of like where he's still doing like capitalist economics brain instead of what's actually good for people, health and such brain. So even though he won the Nobel Prize, who was giving those Nobel Prizes? Capitalists. So anyway, let's see. Do I really want to? What time is it? How long have I been going for? Oh, an hour and a half. Well, let's see. I have a couple more. I think I will do that. I think I will go over a couple more of these tidbits that I have, and then probably call it from there. So let's see. Prof G. All right. So the 31st and the 5th, which was yesterday. So go to 31st. Let's see. 30. All right. Please 31st. Should just tell me. I guess it must be if today's the 6th. And this 29, 30, and 6. So I wish I would just tell the date. I hate when it says days ago. All right. So from here, I have just one mark. It's 40 minutes. Let's do that. You can see that better. 40 minutes. Let's see. All right, start. Let's do here.
She complains that I'm too modest. I don't know what the perfect system is, but I can improve it a little bit at a time.
I think we have time for one more question.
So, okay. Sorry, I have to do this.
One of the things
times it means advocating for
socialism is the thing that I earned. I don't,
however, at the same time,
do this shit.
Andrew, you speak a lot with the business world. You have kind of like a direct line of communication with all of the top executives, the people on Wall Street, the business community at large. And it's interesting to hear that there are concerns in New York specifically with Mamdani about the policing in general. But
insane, moronic, even worried about how Mamdani's going to deal with the police, whatever, shut up.
Socialism at large, you mentioned the strangeness of the capital of capitalism being run by a socialist. However, at the same time, this is spreading across the nation, actually. You've got 46% of Americans saying they don't support capitalism or they have a problem with capitalism. You've got support for socialism at an all-time high in America. So yes, it's strange, but it's actually increasingly not strange. The extent to which socialism is being embraced by people and people are losing faith in the capitalist system, which to me is going to be kind of the great referendum of our time. Do we like capitalism? Do we like the system that we've inherited, or do we not? I would love to get your sense of what the...
So yeah, I don't know. I don't care. Sorkin's going to say, I love capitalism, so I don't care what he says. But again, the gist of their premise again. Yes, Zoran Mamdani is a self-described democratic socialist, so he doesn't even say socialist. He says democratic socialist. And the policies that he ignoring that, say he was something else. The policies he wants to put forth are still not even socialism. They're a tiny modicum of ways to try and get to what should have been occurring this whole time. The proper taxation of, if they had proper taxation of these companies, if share buybacks, which used to be illegal, if those were never allowed, if we actually taxed the rich as they should be taxed, if we tax these corporations as they should be taxed, his policies wouldn't be necessary. If we actually allowed people not to pull the ladder out from under them so people can actually afford housing, this wouldn't be necessary. If the things that he's trying to do is like, what are the powers within New York City, within the mayorship? What can I enact to help take slightly, even just slightly take the boot off of your neck from capitalism, which is profit seeking only. And it is not seeking competition. Capitalism does not breed competition. It is literally trying to rent seek. It's doing it in front of your eyes. So there's nothing you can say to prove otherwise. Capitalism is doing what it exactly wants to do. It doesn't care about whatever political system, democratic or otherwise. It just wants to take and hoard all of everything. So them saying like, oh, well, the capitalist, the most capitalistic city in the capitalist country being run by a socialist, it's like, well, yes, self-described. But what are the policies going to put forth? It's nobody there is going to even, no rich person there is going to even notice that the policies are implemented. But all of the people that, all the actual people that actually work every day, are going to notice it. They're going to actually have a good sense of help with themselves. And that's what, so the big attacks, obviously, on Mamdani aren't just about that one race. And Mamdani even joked about how Andrew Cuomo and others spent more money than he wanted to tax these rich people. But these rich people don't want you to see success or joy or that government can help you. They don't want you to see that government can actually work. They want to have it to themselves. They're aware that the government can work to enrich themselves. Other people need to see that the government can work to help you as well. Not necessarily get rich, but to have a modicum of comfort. They don't want you to see that. So they're going to find other ways to try and make it so Mamdani's policies won't get pushed through. But again, the premise of the question of saying, oh, well, now it's run by a socialist or whatever. It's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like what he wants to describe himself as. The things that Mamdani is going to put forth are like, not like, those are like only a 1 or 2% of what's done in European countries right now. So it's possible it exists. People are still alive, building things. You can complain that maybe not doing what we want to call as innovative or whatever bullcrap. But then you start to get to what does it even matter? Why does it matter that I can make, why does it matter if I make a third X or another Threads or another Blue Sky or whatever? If I don't have healthcare, if I don't have a roof over my head, why do we need to make another bullcrap LLM wrapper that's just going to tell you here's a recipe to make? So innovation, the word has lost all meaning. And the premise of these questions are always just insane. I'm going to bring up this one more since I just have one more bit that I wanted to go over. So Prof G again is like to poke holes in all of their stupid questions. So Prof G markets yesterday, right? Yep. 31-minute mark. Let's see.
A lot of Americans, if you're not on talk about money, definition, you must care about politics too. So this brings us back to the new mayor of New York City, or the new likely mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. Will his mayoralty move markets? Probably not. Remember, New York City is a city. The extent to which one mayor can impact an economy and even a market is very limited. His job is confined to New York. It's to keep New York's trains running on time. It's to help with New York's housing, New York's public schools. This is not a market-moving level of executive power. What could move markets, however, is what this election says. Because as everyone is acutely aware of at this point, Zohran Mamdani is a democratic socialist. And regardless of how you even define that term, the point is this is something different from capitalism, which is important. Because what it tells you is that what this represents isn't just a change to the system, but actually a total and structural overhaul of the system.
So again, like he has like this big long thing that he posted on social media that Elson does. But again, it misses the entire premise, and it's just so like foolish. Like they try to say they're a business podcast or whatever, economics or finance, but they go into politics. Obviously connected, but he goes way into the politics of this. He's adding to the fire of people like screaming that this is gonna like ruin. Now it's like everybody run away. This is pure communism. They even call it communism too. Yes, he's a self-described Democrat socialist. He's like, it doesn't matter how you describe it. Like the difference is we have seen capitalism has had its chance for decades and decades and decades. We have gotten here because of capitalism. Multiple institutions that would help people have failed because of capitalism, because they wanted these people that got into power just enrich themselves. And if other people didn't want to play ball, then the rich would just get rid of them and give money to somebody else who would. So that's how only the people that cared about money got into these political positions, because the rich people would pay for their campaigns for, people talk about it, how they're like just plants, and like social media and like on Instagram and whatnot. Like, oh, like there was that one lady, I forget, I don't even know where she is now, but she's like, I don't know, 25 years old, white blonde lady. She somehow just suddenly had a podcast with Drake or something like that. And then now she's gone. So like they called her a plant. The politicians are also plants, or even dynasties. And so capitalism has failed. What people are proposing isn't even to do like not capitalism. It's still going to be capitalism, but we're going to take back the things that we should have had for decades. Like the things that should have been there in the richest country in the world. And with all the technology and things we have right now, there's a basis that we could have had it back in the 80s, could still have it now, even more so with all the other things. The idea that people still won't want to be competitive, even in a truly, purely socialist structure, is not true. People still like to create and build things. Like it's obvious that they still would, and they would still get some sort of treats for doing so, and like in terms of money or like whatever it is. But what all of this is asking, and what Zohran Mamdani is trying to do, is we're trying to create a floor in which you don't die and become destitute, and your only way of escape is drugs. Because if you're on the street or whatever, not to even say that most people that are on the street anyway even take drugs, but I know that if I were to be sleeping on the streets, I would want to take drugs because that's my only means of escape. We're trying to create a floor that doesn't allow that to happen, which is better for everybody, because that would help crime. It would help bring down healthcare costs. There's a bunch of things, but bringing down healthcare costs obviously goes against capitalism. So that's why they don't want you to have free healthcare and don't want you to have good health outcomes. They want you to get fat, so then you go and spend money to take care of your health problems from having these shitty food that's cheaper than the healthier food. So if you're saying capitalism, it's all profit seeking. Mamdani is trying to create a better floor for people who haven't had a floor for a long time. So again, these premises, questions, this huge freaking out of like, it represents a huge shift in, I'm going to, poop my pants and say whatever Scott tells me to say. It's just silly and foolish. And again, he's just being molded to be another talking head like Scott that just tries to be the Gen Z face to say that capitalism exactly as it is now is still good and going to work. We just have to soften the edges a bit. No, there are big structural changes we have to change. And as time goes on, his thoughts and opinions and takes get more foolish year over year. But they still are increasing revenue year over year because he is what I just said. He's the Gen Z that's going to keep the status quo. And advertisers like that because who are the people that are advertising? The other rich people. So obviously he's going to get more money to keep saying these things in a Gen Z way. So it's more bullshit, more bull crap. Still disgusting to me that these people have platforms that people listen to all the time and don't think critically of this shit. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I had from that big list. Yeah, almost. It's an hour and 45 minutes. Let's see. I don't really know. I don't think I have any sort of game lined up that I want to play right now. Because that'll be the end of the vegetables of the talk. Let's see. Let me see for 1 second. Do I want to play Chronos or anything? No, I think I'll just call it there. Let's see. Yeah, thanks for watching when I was here. I also post to YouTube. So just catch me on there as well. Same name, JR Cormax, if you search it. But yeah, so thanks for being here for whoever was here, and I will see y'all next time.